I know you just had your TIFF 101, but this is our first content-driven panel. Today's our Emerging Filmmakers Day, and I'm going to hand over to our moderator, Wendy Mitchell from Screen International, to introduce the panel. It's an international group here, and I think you guys will really have some good takeaways. Okay, Wendy.
Thank you, Renee, for having us here, and thank you for the audience for being here and being buzzy so early in the morning. It's great to see a packed house, and I think we're going to have some real insight from these experts for you this morning. I'm Wendy Mitchell. I'm the editor of Screen International, and new talent is very important to us at Screen International. We have a program every year called Stars of Tomorrow, where we spotlight new directors and actors in the UK, and that's one reason I'm thrilled to be all been emerging talents themselves at one point or another. And speaking of, I think we'll start with Josh Penn, who produced Beast of the Southern Wild, which you'll all be familiar with from the Oscars, which is pretty remarkable. And Josh, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So my name is Josh Penn. I'm a producer out of New Orleans, and I produced Beast of the Southern Wild and Chopatoulas, which is a doc last year, which played at Hot Docs in Toronto. Among other places. And yeah, I started by making a short film in 2007 with Ben Zeitlin, who directed Beasts as well, and it was sort of precursor. It was the first real film thing I ever did, and kind of everything's sort of just been rolling downhill in this crazy way ever since then.
Great. And Nirja?
Hi, I'm Nirja Narayanan. So I head creative development for Foxstar Studios in India, which is an arm of Fox International Productions. We make local language content, focusing on the local market. So we're making movies in the Hindi language, in the Tamil language, and looking to do Punjabi as well. I've been doing this at Fox for about 3 years and at another studio for 5 years, and started off actually running a film festival, much, much smaller than this one, in England, mainly because I was so frustrated with not getting a job. So being innovative is very important in this business. And also wanting people to know that there were different kinds of movies coming out of India, and not just Bollywood. And that was over 10 years ago, and those different kinds of movies have just grown exponentially since then, and especially in the last couple of years, they've actually started to see commercial success, which is obviously in this business very important for any kind of wave of filmmaking to thrive. So that's me.
Great. Curtis?
Hi, my name is Curtis Birch. I'm an independent producer. I have a company called Latitude Productions, which is about 6 years old. Our first movie, which is called Words and Pictures, is premiering tomorrow night at Roy Thompson Hall with Clive Owen and Juliette Binoche and Fred Skepsey directing. Before that, before the start of my company, which was 6 years ago, I was a development executive in Hollywood for about 20 years. I worked for a guy named Larry Gordon, who produced Die Hard and Field of Dreams, and after that I worked at Castle Rock, Rob Reiner's company, and then at Lightstorm for Jim Cameron. And so clearly I specialized in working with people with narcissistic personality disorder.
And you survived.
I survived. I got as far as Cameron and there was nowhere to go. So after that, I just decided to raise some money and start my own company, which is Latitude, and it all culminates tomorrow night at the Roy Thompson Hall.
Great. Stephen?
My name's Stephen Markovitz. I'm a producer from South Africa. The last film we did was called Viva Riva, which was a gangster movie set in the Congo, which played at TIFF. It was the first film made in the Congo in 25 years. And we sold it to all the major territories, and we did something that hadn't been done before, and now I know why, is we released it in 20 countries in Africa. And we built like a network, a distribution network now across the continent. I'm here with an omnibus of short films called African Metropolis that's showing tomorrow. And I also started a festival which ran a laboratory, and we commissioned about 45 documentaries through that laboratory. I started in the business a long time ago. I won't give away my age, but where it was during the apartheid era in South Africa, when I was working for international news agencies, and my job was to go into the townships every day and get stories, and we were getting shot at and tear gassed, and at the end of the day, the correspondent would arrive in a perfect suit and come and stand there and pretend he'd been there all day. And that kind of inspired me to say we need to tell our own stories and do our own things, and I started a company. We started making short films and documentaries and feature films.
Great. I wanted to elaborate. Everybody said a little bit about how they got started, but I think a lot of people in the room might want to hear some real details about exactly how you got that first big break or got the first job, and I think it's going to be wildly different. Neeraj, you said you started this film festival, but how did you go from there to getting a real job at a distributor? Not that running a film festival is not a real job.
Running a film, oh.
But a different sort of job. How did you segue that?
I actually, for many years, was a sort of Jill of all trades. I made it my business to get as much experience in every aspect of filmmaking as possible. Either that or I was just getting any job I could get in the film business. So basically, the advantage of running this film festival, we got Channel 4 in the UK to sponsor us, along with the Film Council, which was in existence at that time. And it allowed me to meet filmmakers directly on a more equal platform, because they were so grateful that we were actually trying to showcase their movies to a wider audience. And these were not mainstream Indian movies. These were in the non-mainstream zone. So from there, I went into film sales in England, and then went into film production, and then assistant directing on this big movie in India called Mangal Pandey, which took 6 months and shot all over India. And it starred a very big actor called Amir Khan, but despite that, was not a commercial success. But it was a huge learning curve, because in India, the size of a film unit is humongous, which is a lot of the times the reason why the costs are actually not controlled very well. But to go from small productions in the UK to this mammoth period film in India was a huge learning curve. And from there, I went into the studio system. And I've been in the studio system for over 8 years now.
Okay. So for you, it was getting a lot of different experiences at the beginning. Yeah. Josh, I think you come from a pretty different place, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about the sort of gang of guys and Court 13 and how it's all come together.
Sure, yeah. I think I came from a place of just literally just going with your friends down somewhere and just running around with your head cut off until you have a movie, and being really fun and kind of it's sort of anarchy. But it started with, I guess it almost goes back to high school. One of my closest friends and I made a movie in high school that kind of, you can do this thing of watching a chain of like every small door that movie opened up, and no one saw it. Like 20 people saw that movie, but one of them was a filmmaker who invited him to be his apprentice in Prague, and then him and Ben Zeitlin went and worked on that movie in Prague together and formed this bond, and then they worked on everything together, and I graduated college, and then they asked me to join, and then sort of the way everyone in our crew ends up joining is you come down and either you're like, this is exactly the thing I've been looking for in life, like there's this attitude and energy that I think is pretty unique, or I haven't found too many things in my life that are like it, but also can be really stressful if it's not your personality, because it is sort of anarchy. But I got there and I was like, this feels right. I want to keep doing this. And I thought I was going to work on this film for 6 weeks, and then I would go back to doing what I was doing before, which was like music and politics. And it just got in my blood, and I've been basically doing it since.
Did anybody in the group study film or go to film school or anything like that?
Yeah, most of the people in like the core group, except for me, studied film. I did not. I studied business and nonprofit management and fell into it more than everyone else. Everyone else went to Wesleyan together, or not everyone, but a lot of the people went to Wesleyan together and studied film there, but it wasn't a production department. It's more of a film history, like just watch every great film that's been made over the course of history and study why it's good and really dissect it, which I think is an interesting perspective to come from as well.
Yeah.
And it sets the stakes very high if you're studying everything that was great in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and that's your bar.
And what about you, Curtis? Did you go to film school, or how did you get that first foot in the door in Hollywood?
I got I was like most people in this room, I would imagine, grew up intending to be in the movie business in one way or another, and moved from Texas to LA and went to school, but not film school, and got a job first thing out of college working on as an assistant editor on a movie called Satan's Cheerleaders.
A modern classic, some would say.
Title I'm very, very proud of and to speak of a lot. And then worked in editing and then screenwriting and did this circuitous route that led to something I actually was fairly good at, which is working with writers. I was a screenwriter too during a lot of the process. In fact, I had a fairly unique experience when I was working for Larry Gordon. I wrote a screenplay on spec and sold it to Castle Rock, and for a brief period of time thought I would become a screenwriter again, but I didn't have the temperament for it, and Castle Rock asked me when I was done rewriting it, would you like to be an executive here at Castle Rock? And I said yes. So I was hired, and the next day literally the first thing I was told to do at Castle Rock was to fire myself off of my own script and hire somebody to rewrite me, which was a weird conversation to have with yourself.
That would make a good screenplay, though.
Yes, I think, like most careers in this business, if I had sat down to try to design it, it wouldn't be anything. I'm not sure we all share that. It wouldn't have been anything I could possibly have imagined it would lead to being here this weekend.
Yeah. So it's kind of rolling with the punches a bit. Yeah. And Stephen, you just mentioned that you were working on news, and from there went into shorts and documentaries. Maybe you can talk a little bit about how you even got financing for those and how you got your business off the ground and then got into features too.
I'm still working on getting my business off the ground. But we started making short documentary inserts for television, and then we managed to convince the television to co-produce 4 short films, and it was a kind of new thing for them. And we managed to raise some soft money, and it was really, at the early part of democracy in South Africa, where there was just like this new country, and it started a group of filmmakers who were kind of finding their feet and identity, and it was basically a bunch of friends who we hung out together a lot, and just spoke about film obsessively. I mean, for me, the thing about film, it's like a kind of a first love. That's why a lot of people have difficulty having relationships in the film industry. But I think it's, you find people who are as equally as obsessive as you, and you end up working with them, and hopefully it works out. So from there, we started co-producing documentaries with European television and European funding, and then started the first feature film I did was a co-production with Canada, with John Grayson. So that's, and through the festivals, I think festivals are a really interesting way to kind of get into film, because we've had people through our festival who started off as ticket terrors, who became presenters, who became programmers, who went on to become directors. So it's often like a kind of feeding system into the industry. So I've seen a lot of people come through the industry that way.
That's interesting. I want to talk a little bit about shorts, because that's part of your background. It's also part of what you're doing now, and you're here at TIFF presenting some shorts. So maybe you can talk about why shorts are still relevant. Are they the best platform for new talent to be developed for you? Or?
Yeah, I think so. I think for a number of reasons. The one is, if you're going to work with someone on a feature film and they've never made a film before, you only rarely get to know someone when you start producing a film with them. And a short is kind of, on the one level, it's an inexpensive way to kind of test the relationship. And on another level, it's the kind of obvious thing of it becomes a calling card to the director can show what their vision is. Do they have an original voice? What do they want to say? And that's, often with first-time directors going to financiers and trying to convince them to put money into it, if they haven't made a short, it's really difficult to convince them. So I think it's a very necessary part of the process. And, you know, the idea is to kind of, what we've done with this African Metropolis series is we did 6 shorts in 6 African cities, and we partnered with established festivals to create platforms for the filmmakers. And our thinking was also, you know, most people take like 5-7 years to make their first feature film, often if they're lucky. And I find, I can only speak from working in Africa, is that often the films are underfunded and not fully realized. And it just kind of perpetuates a stereotype of bad cinema. So our thinking was to kind of go back a step and say, okay, let's make really good shorts with it, like a proper development program and a marketing program to really like have a movement behind it. So I think they're incredibly useful to do. And I mean, I would encourage people. I thought I'd stop making them in my 30s, and I've produced like 35 short films now, and I still seem to be doing this and making a living. So yeah.
Great. And Josh, obviously, shorts were very important on the road to getting Beasts made. Do you still work in short films?
I haven't worked in a short film since Beasts. I did a bunch of music videos, which is also short form, but not shorts. But I would say pretty much every door that got open to actually making Beasts was opened by the short film. Like, it was, you sort of, especially a movie like that, which on paper is not financeable or anything like even necessarily executable on paper. Like, we would tell people about it and they would look at us like we were crazy. But basically, we'd tell people about it, they would look confused, and we'd say, okay, here's our short film. If you like it, you know, give us a call and we'll talk again. And if you don't, you probably don't want to talk to us anyway. And a bunch of people called us, and luckily some of the right people called us, and we were actually able to make this film off of people's reaction to that, and have people really believe in us.
But do you think the collective will work on other people's new shorts in the future, or just features for now?
Yeah, I think we'd love to. I think absolutely we don't have anything in the works right now, but I think there's certain stories that, you know, are much better told in 10 minutes or 20 minutes than an hour and a half. And I think we want to be open to finding the right length for whatever content. And we're also really interested in continuing to work with filmmakers at all experience levels. And, you know, I do think short films are a very good place to start, you know.
Okay, great. Nirja, you were saying in India, short system doesn't really work.
No, there's no distribution network for short films in India, unfortunately. I mean, I produced a small short film when I moved to India from England, which was called Sala Bandar, which means that bloody monkey in Hindi. And it was this magnum opus, Romeo and Juliet, about a monkey and two star-crossed lovers. But that did a good festival run, but within India, nothing. I mean, I definitely do encourage the filmmakers that come to us to showcase their work. So either they shoot sample scenes if they're first-time filmmakers, and some of the producers get them to shoot sample scenes, which is, I think, quite a useful way of, as Stephen was saying, testing the waters and seeing whether you can gel with that filmmaker and whether they actually are able to handle a unit and multiple people. But as Josh was saying, short films are a really good way to get to know your craft as a filmmaker, because if you can tell an engaging story, whether it's 3 minutes, 10 minutes, 2 hours, or sometimes, as in India, 3 hours, then it's just a good litmus test of, I know my audience, I know what I'm doing, and this is how much money I have to do it, and I'm able to do it within that much money. But unfortunately, there's no distribution network, so people have to go outside for funding, usually at Sundance or Rotterdam, and get money to do that in India.
Okay. I wanted to talk about that finance aspect, because I'd imagine everybody here is in something of a position where people come to you saying they want your support or your backing or your financing, your production skills. So how do emerging talents approach you, and how do you respond to them? And what stands out when people do want to work with you? Who do you take seriously that approaches you? Nirja, why don't you, you must get thousands of submissions from writers and directors.
I try to meet as many unsolicited submissions as I can, but with the sheer volume of traffic that we get, it becomes actually logistically impossible to do that. So I have a very, very small team. So they screen. It's awful, I know, but they screen the work just so that we can get a sense of what the filmmaker is trying to tell and whether it's a story that the studio is even interested in from a genre perspective, from content, from budget, etc. So it's a good screening process that we have in place. But I think that what stands out for me personally is clarity of vision. In India, there's a tradition, and because I worked in England, I know it's different. So in India, there's a tradition of narrative filmmaking, which means that when you go to meet a producer or a studio executive, you tell them the story. You don't necessarily give them a script. That's changing now, at least in the last couple of years. People do give over scripts, which is hugely helpful, especially from a budgetary perspective. I mean, I'm sure everyone will agree with that. You need a bound script to actually be able to budget your film and schedule your film properly. But what narrating it does is it gives us the idea that this person knows his story or her story. They have that vision in their heads. Sometimes they even enact parts, which can be, it sounds comical, but it actually makes me realize that, okay, they've put this much time and effort into this story. They know their characters. They know the kind of music that they want. And it really helps to understand that they have clarity of vision and original thought, because there's a lot of derivative filmmaking, especially in India, where there's a lot of unofficial remakes that happen. So it's good if someone comes up with a strong original idea and has the ability to visualize it in their heads. That's what I look for.
Josh, you guys must have been inundated after Beast with scripts you didn't want and people getting in contact. How do you deal with all that, and who do you actually talk to?
Well, I think sometimes people think we have money. So when they're coming to us for money, it's pretty easy to say, hey, well, actually, we're searching just like you are. No, we get a fair amount of blind submissions. I mean, to be totally honest, we're a very small company and definitely don't have the ability to take on reading just things that are cold emailed, which is too bad, because you sort of know that there's going to be some gems in there, but also probably be all of our like full-time jobs, and we wouldn't be able to get anything else done if we were to do that. In terms of, you know, what's the thing that like jumps out to me? I mean, I'm personally very interested in like very unique stories, like things that seem like they haven't been told or are being told in a new way. I'm personally less like interested in things that fall into like the genre categories, or just something that pops off the page, and someone who, I think a director who really has a vision and like just the will to take a movie on their back and like just carry it for years and do kind of the impossible. And if you can, that's something you can't really measure, but sometimes you can feel that someone has that. And I do think oftentimes that's really the difference in these small movies, of something never getting made or something getting made but not made to its full stability. You sort of need someone who's like just so stubborn that they'll just see it through no matter what.
Curtis, I wanted to ask you about currently at Latitude, but also back in your days in the studios. What broke through, and you know, what kind of people are approaching you at Latitude? What was catching your attention?
Well, that's two different questions. As far as Latitude goes, you know, I'm a pretty easy person to get in touch with. I haven't felt any need to change that. I sort of like being accessible. That being said, you know, I have 4 projects in a pre-production stage, and one of them came from a festival not unlike this. It was a script that I read at the Austin Film Festival a few years ago, written by 2 guys who'd never written a script before, and I fell in love with the basic the basic premise of it, and bought it outright at the festival. So I'm open to more from screenwriters and filmmakers. It's hard for the way that I get my movies financed. It's hard for me to take on a new filmmaker, because my projects my financing is pretty dependent on cast and it's rare that someone who's never directed a feature before can attract the kind of cast that I need to get my movies funniest. But that being said, on the screenwriting side, I'm pretty open, and like Josh says, you sort of know when you read something. And you too. I mean, you know if something's new and original, and also another way I would put it is that most of what I see that's sort of unsolicited, it's clear that the person hasn't really mastered their craft yet. They're going out earlier probably than they should, and it's the hardest thing to tell somebody that you're not ready yet because everyone thinks that they are. But the truth is that you do have to put in those 10,000 hours unless you're Orson Welles or and there's only been one of him. As far as how to approach me, blind emails almost never work because once you realize that they're impersonal, I find if you look at an email and it says, I can't wait for you to read my script. Once you, at least this is the way I respect. If I can see that it's an impersonal email, I delete it before I finish it. If it says, dear Curtis, I saw you speak at Toronto and I thought you were brilliant, then I finish reading the email. So be smart if you're gonna be making blind submissions. Find a way to make it personal and interesting. And if people aren't responding to, not all great movies reduce well to log lines. That's the other thing. So if your movie isn't about premise, if it's about execution, you have to find a way to say that. But there's a way to do it. Like I say, I bought something that was completely green from people that were completely green, and there are ways to break through.
That's a really encouraging story, I think, for people that if the material's right, you're open to, yeah. And Stephen, a little bit about how people approach you and what you listen to the most.
Well, I think I wish I was more open than I am. I think I used to accept unsolicited scripts. So we were a small company and we were getting 200 to 300 scripts a year. And it was in the days before people emailed them. So we, after about 3 or 4 years, I was spending most of my time just reading bad scripts, to be honest. And but we used to keep them in a storage room, and we moved offices, and there were about 1,500 scripts in this room. And I got my assistant to go through these scripts, and only one of them had actually been made. And it was quite a wake-up call. So, we just can't really afford to process that many scripts. So, what I do is every couple of years I'll do 6 or 7 short films through these kind of programs, and I normally will pick up one of the directors from that, and I go, I'll read a script if, I've seen the person's work before and I really like their work, or someone I really trust recommends them to me. But I think it is that, for me, what I'm looking for is originality. I think it's... I come across, where I come from, a lot of derivative filmmaking, and I'm looking for people who have original voices, who are finding new ways to tell stories, who are kind of being quite honest and authentic. And I find it very difficult. It's really hard to find those projects. So I find through making short films, or I sit on juries of student festivals and other festivals, and it's more through that I find talent.
But it does sound like a lot of people are interested in finding new talent. Yeah. It's not that you're fending them off all the time, it's that you want to find the right ones. So that's a good, encouraging sign, I think.
I think Curtis had a really good point where he said sometimes you're not ready to submit something. And we get a lot of first-time filmmakers who are very impatient. So I think that, we'd probably all agree that it takes a long time to make a movie. In India, the turnaround time is actually shorter, and even then it's about 2 years. But we've tried to institute a development process where we put something that we like into development, but then you have to work with the filmmaker, which means that the filmmaker has to be open within a studio system to accept some kind of creative guidance. Usually, it's not a lot of creative guidance if we feel that that filmmaker has a very clear vision. But you have to be able to put that time and effort into your own product before you think it's in a state in which you can share it with others. And there are different ways to do that. I mean, you don't need to go to a producer or go to a studio immediately. I know a lot of filmmakers who form collectives amongst themselves. And what they do is they have pitch sessions amongst themselves or reading sessions amongst themselves. We do this at studio as well, where you do have a reading, a script reading, or, we also do the research once the film is actually done. But you can do it in an informal setting because what it allows you to do is test your material with a non-partisan audience and get different reactions. And you need to be very self-assured to do that because you might not like what you hear, and we can become very attached to our material, especially if it's our first film. But there are unofficial ways to do that and get it to a state where you're like, okay, I'm pretty happy with this now, but I know that it needs a little bit more work, and then present it.
Also, I just want to double down on what Curtis said, just in terms of the personal versus the form letter. And if you actually, if I actually get an email that it's clear someone put a lot of thought into and is shows care, and there's a reason why they're emailing me, and it's not necessarily just the same email that they literally, I can tell sometimes that someone just literally pressed send on an email that 100 times in a row, that's the same thing. And sometimes by design, a lot of them are the exact same format, and I guess that's just meant for companies that aren't like me. But I think that forum letter or that personal letter necessarily have me producing a film in 5 days? No, but I do think I'll try to respond and be helpful to people, and then once you're in a conversation, it actually has room to go somewhere. And I think a lot of this time it just starts with building that relationship, and that's a good step.
I'd agree with that. Just from the press side, I get a lot of emails saying, "Here, write about my short film," and it's clearly they have no idea. They've sent it to 100 publications. But if somebody takes the time to say, "Oh, I noticed Screen supports this kind of person," or this editor worked on this, and just to present yourself in the best way possible, in the most personal way possible, I think is a good tip. I wanted to get back to the festivals conversation because we're at one, first of all, and also I think they can be so important for new filmmakers. And like we're saying with shorts in India, they don't get seen locally, but they can have a life on the festival circuit. And obviously Sundance probably changed your career and that film's trajectory. And just maybe everybody talk a little bit about how best to navigate a festival once you're there, or which festivals you would recommend going to. You said in Austin you met these screenwriters and did a deal with them.
Yeah, I think that I don't know Toronto that well. This is my first time here, but I get a sense already that people are pretty accessible, and that this is a completely perfect way to meet people that can help you get what you need done. You have to be, you just have to be smart about how you approach people, because I don't think most people who are in our position to help you are really looking for you to come up to them. So it's kind of like meeting, I would imagine, this is like meeting somebody in a bar. You don't go up to them and say, do you want to sleep together? I mean, you go up and you say, you know what I'm saying, in other words? I was wondering about that analogy as I started.
You start by buying them a drink.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. You really you want to get to know somebody who might help you. You want to have and develop a relationship, but you can't be pushy about it. You got to be smart and sensitive. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But I do think that's what the great thing about a film festival is having this kind of access. I think as much as seeing or showing your movie is just having this direct access to people.
Yeah, I was going to say it's not just about the 300 films that are here this week. It's about the thousands of people and the 500,000 people or however many will see these films. But it's the people in the rooms and at the bars and on the red carpet and, talking to people. But maybe you could talk a little bit about what Sundance was like this year and how it went crazy for you.
I mean, yeah, Sundance was, when we had Beast there, was a very insane experience. We had finished the film like literally 2 days before our premiere, and we barely had a chance to breathe or sleep before the festival, and then all of a sudden you're in a room with 1,200 people. You've been working on this thing for 3 years, and you just don't know what's going to happen. And even in the room, like, it felt really good, but it's hard to know. And all of a sudden, it kind of just became this out of control thing where, it was sort of went beyond anything we had actually. I think like you always like hope something like that's going to happen, but certainly don't expect it. And I think it actually that experience went beyond any sort of reasonable hope. I think like if I had the dream of what happened, I would have gotten mad at myself for, But I think Sundance is an amazing festival, but I'm a big believer in like a big festival run, like play every small regional festival, not only like in the States and Canada, but also just try to get it around the world. And with short films as well, it's, you never know which person, even if it's an audience of 30, you don't know who's going to be in there, and there may be one of those 30 people who can be extremely helpful. We got Beasts basically financed because someone saw the movie 9 months into its festival, or Glory at Sea 9 months into its festival run at a festival that we almost didn't play because we had to travel one more time to go, and then, it changed the course of our entire lives that we had to play for that extra room of 60 people. So just do it, and also go out there. If you have a film at a festival, go meet as many people as possible with it. And
I think meeting other filmmakers is one of the joys of
Yes.
being at a festival, and you never know if you're going to collaborate with somebody later or just be supportive of one another.
And it's fun if you're on like a festival circuit. You'll go to 8 different cities around the world maybe and see the same people, and it's a cool kind of friendship.
Yeah.
And
And
then
did
2
you-
years later, maybe you're on the same track and you have another one with them.
Did you do any of the labs or this Film
Yes.
Forward thing that you've been doing? Is that Sundance related?
That is Sundance related.
Okay.
I did the producers lab,
Okay.
and with Beast, we did the screenwriters lab, the producers lab, and the directors lab.
Okay.
So they were extremely, extremely supportive in those programs. Those type of things, do them. I think they really can. Like when things get really scary, you kind of go into a room with a bunch of people who are as scared as you on like the other fellow's side, and then a bunch of other people who have actually been through it before who are there just to be this supportive network, and it's unbelievable.
And we should mention there's a lab here for producers. There's an international finance forum here that's got 40 producers from around the world. There's lots of initiatives here, but also at maybe smaller festivals and more international festivals as well. Stephen, maybe you can talk about some of just the international festivals, or Durban. Is that important for you, that festival? Or?
Yeah, it's an important local festival. I think festivals are key to kind of getting your voice out there, and it's a way to travel and start working on your next film. And also it can be a revenue source. You could charge at the smaller festivals, you could charge screening fees, and if you're really efficient about it, you can earn some money out of that. I think there's, just to pick up with what you were saying, is that this thing about going up to someone and saying, I've got a script and most of the time that won't work. There's no quick fix. It's about building long-term relationships. And they're people I met 10 years ago, and I've never asked them for anything, and now we're starting to come around to do something together. So, I mean, there's always an exception to that, but I think one shouldn't just try for this instant gratification. It does take time to build these relationships. I think festivals, as has been said already, are incredibly useful to get your film seen and try to pick up some prizes, etc. But I think there's a flip side to it, and that is, I've seen this happen with directors I've worked with who've become successful, that you get invited to 60, 70 festivals, and they go on every trip, and they end up spending a year and a half of people telling them how brilliant they are, but not actually making a film, and then they wake up one day and go, well, what am I going to do with my life? So I think there's a danger when you have that kind of success that you just get your ego fed all the time, and a lot of people do sleep around when they become...
And free champagne
yeah,
everywhere
so
you
it's
go.
like, it seems good at the time, But, I've always said to directors, you've got to have a checklist, a criteria to assess whether you should go to a festival or not. And if it doesn't meet that checklist, you shouldn't go. I mean, they don't always listen to me, but, we got invited to a film in Kyrgyzstan, and it was the first African film that had ever shown there. And they invited me, and I looked at the country and the travel plan, and it would have taken about 5 days to get there and back, and I just thought, I can't do this. Yeah. But the director went there, and he charmed everyone and won the main prize. So, you never know with these things. Yeah. But I think one has to kind of regulate one's attendance at festivals also, because one's got to do the work, it's all about really working hard to develop projects and relationships and deliver. And festivals can often be a distraction from that.
I think that's a very smart point. When you are at a festival like this, do you mind if you're in the elevator and somebody says, hey, I'm Joe Smith, I'd like to contact you, I liked your film. Do you mind that?
No, not at all. Okay. No. For the time I'm at the festival, no. But
okay.
I mean, I'm amazed, I go every year to Cannes, and I have like 50, 60 meetings, and everyone's so nice to me. And they think what I'm doing is so interesting, and then most of them don't return my emails afterwards. So I think, there's a kind of, people have kind of festival personalities, and then they kind of get back to their real lives, and there's often a real...
They're not so nice.
Exactly. They're not as friendly and open. So I think, I remember people who, they didn't come up and just talk about a film, but they kind of connected with me in some way, and I had a real conversation. It doesn't matter what it's about, and I felt that this person's interesting. Then someone who says, I've got a script, can I email it to you? That's generally not going to work.
Anybody else? Do people hand you their cards
I mean, I
all
think
day?
the festival personalities point is actually a very valid one, especially with studios, because all studios, the executives have festival personalities. And depending on the kind of movie you're trying to make, festivals can be a really good way to get a little bit of a tester of an audience response. But I actually think that you need to look very carefully at how much business your film is generating at festivals. You can get seduced by as we were just talking about, the whole glamour of it, and you're being flown around the world, and it's a very good atmosphere to meet fellow filmmakers, and that is inspiring even for people within the system as well as outside the system. But it's important to keep in mind, I need to be this is the film business, and in order to stay in the business, I need to generate a profit. So how much money is my film making? And if it's not making this money, then as Steven said, you can fly around the world for a year and then wake up in the morning and say, oh, okay, now what? So in India, Toronto is actually a very friendly festival towards Indian cinema. And historically, they've been very friendly towards Indian cinema. So I think this year alone, they have a sort of non-mainstream film called The Lunchbox, which is wonderful, by a first-time writer-director. Ritesh Batra. It's a lovely, lovely, heartwarming film. And then there's a mainstream Bollywood film called Shuddh Desi Romance. So they've actually done a very good job of balancing both kinds of cinema that's coming out of that country. But I think the litmus test will be to see how much business is generated. I mean, I know The Lunchbox is getting a lot of good word of mouth. But whether a film works within its home market when it works in the festival market is another thing to consider. Indian films that work in festivals generally do not work in the domestic market. And in my opinion, you need to first make a movie that works in one market. Then if the story is universal and if something connects, then it will travel. I mean, we had a small film that we made on child labor, which was a minuscule budget. It was less than $1 million. And it ended up going to Tokyo and did wonderfully well in Japan. Who would have thought? And we had another couple of films that went to Shanghai. These are not known festivals. These are mainstream Hindi films. But what it does is that it opens up those markets. So now we can release the movies there, and then they generate business. So I think you need to be circumspect about, is this festival going to be good for me, good for my film, and then make the decision to go there. And definitely, we're open to being approached, but within reason. Yeah. Basically, just buy us a lot of drinks. Yeah.
Yeah, poor filmmaker specialties.
Oh, no.
Buying the executives.
It's a little reality check.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing about the bubble of it. I think what you're saying is important, but maybe for a first-time filmmaker, it's okay to. I think it's okay to have a first-time film be small and have it just be a festival film where you just build that goodwill so you can make that next thing. But I think it fits in interestingly what you're saying about like getting a big head. Like I think there's something where you do have to, going into a festival and while you're on the circuit, you have to realize the bubble you're in, both as a human being and as a business, because there's films that, this happens every year at Sundance, there's films that you go to Sundance and you would think the movie's going to be the biggest thing in the entire world, and then it comes out and, it will never make it to New Orleans. It will never, it'll be in New York for a week, and it is a different world, and I personally think that's fine. I think it's like an exciting world to just be the hit of the festivals, but I think it's good for people to really think about what their expectations are for their film, so that they can first off find the right partners for themselves and not get kind of sweet talked into thinking some crazy thing's going to happen with the used car salesman, and instead find a partner who actually fits what they want in the world and what they want for their future and what they want for their film, and find the best home for that.
I mean, I just want to add to that it is about relationships. So even if you don't get your next film, you form relationships. And this entire business internationally is run on relationships. Like today I'm at Fox, tomorrow I could be an independent producer, tomorrow Josh could be the head of the Weinstein Company. It's all about relationships. I mean, it's all about making a connection, saying, yeah, these are the kind of stories that we want to tell. There's a common ground. And then you never know what the future will bring. So this kind of environment is really good for that, and it should be encouraged.
And one thing that happens at a lot of festivals is the markets, which sometimes they'll be like I always do Independent Film Week, which is next 2 weeks from now, I guess. But you just do these like speed dating meetings where you meet 40 people in the course of 3 days, and it's exhausting, and 20 of your blind dates go pretty badly, maybe 5 go really well, but you don't know. But there are people I met in 2009 at some of those things who I'm just now finding things to actually do with them, but because you spend 20 minutes like figuring out who they are and that there's someone that someday you'd like to maybe work with, it can lead somewhere.
Yeah, I think all of that leads to, be nice to people, maybe not fake nice, but also don't bullshit people. Don't say you've got $5 million in financing if you don't, because people find out that kind of thing pretty quickly if you're lying.
Yeah, I think
And
the
it goes
basic
back to-
point is that we're all making is the relationship, business relationships aren't that much different than personal relationships, and that you want to approach somebody and be and respectful and try to connect, so that it's somebody you want to work with, whether you're the filmmaker or whether you're the buyer. I mean, you want to work with people that you like and that you connect with. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, and even in those kind of settings, I still think the cold email rule kind of applies the same. If you sit down for a meeting and you just all of a sudden start like going into a robotic pitch, people get that a lot. I don't think I get that as much as some other people in the industry, but I think some people get approached with that kind of stuff like 40 times a day, and they're just gonna, glaze over. And so it is about like talk about the things you're really excited about, and like who you are, and why you're excited about that meeting.
I mean, just to add one thing that I've learned is that, everyone here has got a film they want to make, and that everyone is pitching to somebody, no matter who you are, what level of this industry you're at. And you're often meeting people who are more powerful or influential than you, but you really just got to be yourself, You got to be honest and true, and try not to bullshit, because it will come out. I think also just your body language is quite important. I think it's a lot of our business lives depend on what comes out at these festivals and these meetings, and it's important not to seem desperate, even if you are,
Okay. On that note, I thought we might open it up for some questions, as long as you're not pitching. Don't pitch your script or your treatment. But does anybody have a question yet? If not, I've got another one. But No questions yet? Somebody be brave in the next 5 minutes. Oh, here we have a brave young lady. Okay.
Hello. My question, I guess, is for the panel that what do you think of somebody focusing on making short films to have sort of as a way of presenting themselves rather than waiting for their script to be, like their feature to be made, like actually going out and pushing and getting things made and then sort of showing what you're at least able to do on a small budget? Or even taking an idea from a feature and then making that short to give an idea of what you're capable of as a filmmaker.
Well, let me just to make sure I'm understanding. You're saying like the idea of having just a standalone short film as opposed to like a short version of your feature? Is that the question?
No, I guess it's a calling card. Like either putting all your energy into trying to make a feature get made, or actually, if you haven't made a lot of films, if you're a first-time filmmaker, to actually try to go out and have some body of work to show as well.
I think it's very, very important to have something to show. I think if you're looking to raise money for a feature, it's exponentially harder without a strong short film or something you can be proud of. I don't think it needs to be the same subject matter at all. I'm generally usually more interested actually if it's different subject matter, because I think most stories aren't meant to be told both in 10 minutes and in 90 minutes. Like there's a reason why one would be one or the other. But one can certainly lead into the other.
No, I think get any and every which way kind of experience in filmmaking, and that encompasses the entire audiovisual spectrum. So whether it's a music video, a documentary, a television program. I mean, just in India, as an example, one of our now A-list directors was a documentary filmmaker for a very long time in the non-fiction format, was now making very masala Bollywood films. So who would have thought? But definitely try every single way of communicating a story. And that gives people the ability to show what you can do. And because we're giving you money, so we want to be able to see what you have done with it in the past. So just get every kind of experience that you can.
I also think it allows people to find you rather than you needing to find people, which is gonna, if someone finds you, there's a much, much better chance it goes well. And because you've sort of put something out there and then people can weed themselves out.
Just to add to that, I think you got to do both. I think, if you make a great short and you don't have a feature, people are going to go, what's your next project? And you're going to lose a year or two that way. I think everyone is curating in a way. I think festivals curate, labs curate, producers curate. It's all about looking for quality and for talent. So if you get your short film into a good festival or you win a prize, it gives it a certain stamp. If you get into a lab, there's another stamp, and people look at that and they go, okay, well, this festival watched 7,000 films, they chose 300, maybe there's something in it, or you got into a lab of 20 out of 500. So all these things are important to kind of build momentum around your project.
Great. There's another audience question, second
Hello.
row up here. Okay.
Hello?
Wait for the mic, maybe?
I've got a mic right here.
Oh,
Do
no,
you mind if I
somebody's
ask
got
my
back
question?
there. Sorry, it's Brian.
Hi. My question is for the panel, but I just wanted to compliment Mr. Penn. That was one of the best movies I've seen in 5 years. I mean, thank you so much. My question is, you guys all get thousands of scripts. You've all read thousands of scripts, and you have the ability to see a great script right away. Do you think everyone has that ability? Do other filmmakers reading other writers say, yes, that's talent? Or is there something special about you guys that know when you see a great script that is unique?
We're Jedi Knights.
Special. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think it's everybody has their own sensibility, and certain scripts are gonna be received well by certain people. But I can also tell you that it is absolutely not true that many of the people that read your script are good at reading scripts. I mean, that is coming from the world of development. Another way of saying it is, there is not an absolute value to your script, and that's one of the problems with the studio system. I think is that a script gets put into the system and it gets read by readers, and there's coverage, and there's this sense that either a script is good or it is bad, and that's obviously not true, but it's especially important, I think, for the filmmaker or to the screenwriter not to accept that premise that there is some kind of absolute quantifiable nature to a script, because I'm sure we can all think of hundreds of movies that were roundly rejected by many people, but the right person found it and fell in love with it and got it made. So it's such a provocative question, and tons of things comes to mind, but one thing I just think you need to be sure is not to put too much credence in what people say about your script, because a lot of them haven't even read it entirely, or they're relying on what somebody else that read it said. So you have to have the really deep confidence and assurance that what you've written is worthwhile.
Okay. Josh, did you have something?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good both in writing and reading scripts. I try to just do it away from a place of cynicism, and I try to not I think you can be very cynical about what will go really, really wide, and I think especially in first reading a script, I just try to say, does this emotionally work? Is this captivating, and not think can this make $40 million? Because I think the moment you start asking yourself that question, it becomes you're just looking at what was made last year and basically trying to recreate it, and then you're not going to get that thing that's singular. So that's sort of my process, is just trying to read something straight, I guess.
I mean, I think it's important for people within the system to also train themselves constantly. We do not have all the answers. We're human beings. And I'm sure that every single one of us has lost a movie that really hurts us inside when, for some reason, even within a studio system, I might want to do a film, but it's a studio, and there would be other reasons not to do that film, and then it's heartbreaking, especially when it goes on and makes a lot of money. But it's heartbreaking to actually turn filmmakers away. So we don't want to do that. We don't want to say no. We want to find something that we're really inspired by, and there's no answer. I mean, we, as you rightly said, we need to learn to constantly train ourselves and develop our own creative abilities as much as judge other people's. So we don't have any special Jedi mind powers. It's just what jumps out at us from the page, and even if it's just a little germ that we see, and that germ can grow, then that's something that we want to go with.
Okay, I'm afraid we're out of time, even though I know you had a question, but you can grab them in the elevator, I hope. I just wanted everybody to sum up maybe with one line of advice for a rising filmmaker. What's your one thing you would say to them? Who's on the spot first?
I'll go first. I'll make a fool of myself. I think, every project I do normally gets about 50 to 100 rejections, and about 3 or 4 people say yes. So just be tenacious, and all you've got really is your instinct often. I think I agree this whole thing about the marketing, it's going to be a blockbuster, nobody knows. So just, trust your instinct and have a thick skin.
I think one thing I would add to that is if you're a filmmaker or a screenwriter especially, be your own producer. Think of yourself as a producer, even if you're not a producer. I mean, the idea, you need to sort of disabuse yourself of the idea that there is going to be somebody you can find who's going to do it for you. We're all in this together, and frankly, I was, as I said, executive for 20 years. I'd never raised money or produced a movie, and at the age of 51, I did it, and it was just as hard as anything else. So it's a great egalitarian business. It's one of the great things about the business is that anybody can do it.
My advice is to be honest, especially with the press. Self-serving, but
Be patient and be tenacious, because you might not get a quick fix. It might take some time. So if you have a pet project that you're working on and it's not getting off the ground, don't be afraid to put it aside and take up something else, because when it actually does take off the ground, every film has its own life cycle, and you just need to be patient and just go with it. And humility, I just want to emphasize that. This is a business full of huge egos, and dealing with a film set full of egos is exhausting. So humility and patience, that's the two things that I would say.
Mine's going to sound like the opposite of yours. Mine's going to be don't wait. But in the sense of like just go find a story you actually are in love with, that you really want to tell, and go make it with your friends and figure out a way to make it for next to nothing, and just go do it and get it out there and have fun making it. And if you and your friends throw everything you have into something and all your passion and live up to your own expectations, I do think people will respond. You'll find people who want to jump aboard that train.
Okay, some amazing advice. So thank you to our panel. And thanks for being a great audience.